It is my pleasure to now start the actual lessons on the assessor's qualifications. The assessor qualifications are very critical, and in the introduction I've described the composition and all the components and the procedures and processes required. So in these lessons I won't repeat what I've said already. If you want to refer to the materials, load back the DVDs that we gave to you and go through the actual printed documents that came with it. Now very quickly, let me introduce the lesson for today. I will be with you for the rest of this course, and also other tutors may use these materials. So at times you might find that actually they're playing this lesson in a lesson which I'm not personally teaching. That is acceptable, for this resource is produced for every single tutor, even yourself in the future, to use them. Right. What are we going to start with? We are actually looking at the objectives of the first lesson, which are as follows. Candidates will be able to identify and explain the principles and requirements of assessment, and also to identify and describe, I beg your pardon, describe the different types of assessment methods and various assessment types, such as diagnostic, formative, and summative. These will become clear as we actually go into the actual teaching. We also hope that by the end of this session, or the period in which you're going to be looking at all these lessons, you'll be able to demonstrate how to plan assessment, and also to demonstrate ability to involve learners and others in assessment. Assessment is not an exclusive exercise whereby you be the only one and your candidate alone and that's it. No, it is a teamwork, as you discover later in the process of assessment, which includes standardization and so forth. You'll be back and forth talking to others in the assessment team, which for those who are going to pursue the components on assessing competence in the work environment, you discover that even the supervisors in the work environment will be part of the assessment team. The witnesses, those going to sign witness statements, will be part of the team. So it's very critical from the word go that you get used to work with others. If you have got a strength up to this level to work with others, I'd like you to up a bit, because you find that in the process of planning for assessment, process for arranging materials, it will involve you talking to other people. So these things will come clear. Now, very quickly, I want us to consider one aspect which I want to draw attention to you. Where does assessment start from in trying to meet all these objectives? What is a starting point for assessment? If you and I agree, assessment must begin at this point. When you are ready as an assessor, you've got all your materials together, you've got all the criteria from the board, the syllabus from the exam board or from the internal organization that has developed the qualification, you've got all that in place. The very first thing you're going to do is make sure you make your own delivery plan. Are you with me? Your own delivery plan. How you're going to deliver this. Now, let's assume that at this stage you have made that plan. How you're going to deliver this. You have structured that work, just like the way I introduced you to this course. Now, when you have begun your work properly and you're going to meet your learners for the first time, this is what I would like us to look at, the components of assessment. We will also, before I proceed, recommend a very good book by Jeff Petty, Teaching Today. Page 500, from page 500 forward, there's some good session on assessment, principles of assessment and things you need to consider. This book is a very good book. I've used it for quite a number of years and I found it a very good book. There are other materials I'll show you, and those ones that we received in the part, use them, but go and buy this book as well. Right. In this section, as we begin to cover the assessments, we will look at fundamental areas, which will include the following to cover. We'll look at the function of assessment in learning and development. We look at those ones. Defining key concepts and principles of assessment. We'll look at the responsibilities of an assessor. We will also look at the regulations and requirements for specified environments of assessment. If you're assessing in the construction industry or in the health and social care industry, as the case might be, each of you as assessors there, you should be able to speak with your learners. The environment in the area you're assessing, you must be qualified, you must be competent yourself. So you must be able to bring out elements of the regulations required. And then we probably will be able to compare, if we talk about different assessment methods and the stages, we'll compare a bit of that. But the first thing I'd like us to look at is the types of assessment there is there and the stages. When you have now begun your work as an assessor and you meet your learners for the first time, we assume that you have already structured your own plan how you're going to approach your assessment journey with your learners. Not how you're going to assess your learners yet, how you're going to carry the journey. The first thing I want us to look at is as follows: the stages of assessment. And then we're going to look at some key concepts and factors. Then we'll define assessment as we go on. By this way of teaching, I'd like you, in fact, to begin to put points together what you think assessment is all about. Okay? Then now we'll bring out my own summary there with you. So let us look at the following stages. In order to meet the objectives, let's start with the stages in the assessment. In the assessment what? Process. Okay? What this will help us identify when we look at the stages in the assessment process, what this, I beg your pardon, I have my pen in my hand. What this will help us identify is very critical and important. Number one, if I have a learner for the first time, or a number of learners, I want to do what we call as I just take myself out of the way first of all. Yips. I keep myself there. Do you like to see me there? Are you happy for me to stick around there? I'll stay there for a bit. You like my face. Right. You want to do what we call initial assessment, right? Or also known as diagnostic assessment. Okay. Initial assessment or diagnostic assessment is the kind of process you take a learner through to find out a number of components. You want to find out, number one, the function skills. Are they able to read? Are they able to write? Are they able to use numbers? This is very important. The second thing you also find out is their prior learning. Have they been on this course, or have they done this type of work before? Because you're assessing them in that environment, or as the case might be. While you're doing that, you're going to now find out the learner needs, the shortfalls and gaps. Not so as you can reject them, but you can also plan better for them to enjoy and learn whatever they want to learn. So prior knowledge. And also you want to find out if they've got any other qualifications in those areas and at what level. It might be that you find that they can become bored if they are on the wrong program or the wrong level. Thereby you can recommend a sort of direction for them to take. You're also looking at the way a learner learns. What are the inborn abilities? What style? Are they visual learners or audio learners or kinesthetic? Are these people like practical things? You will design your initial assessment such that it covers a wide range of these things. But the amount of questions you put in there depends on the time you have. You can break the initial assessment in several stages. The first stage, they can look at the function skill. The second one, they can look at the actual discipline in which they are in. Or you can combine this. Just depends on the kind of learners you have. You can, by first impression, so determine which direction you can go. But when you design this initial assessment or diagnostic, it's actually identifying the learner needs and to see how better you can plan for them. At that stage, you can also ask them how best physically, practically, how best they learn, or how best they'd like to be assessed. Is it through professional discussion? Is it through observation? Is it through assignments, written assessments? And once you identify a wide range of these things and the suitability, depending on the environment in which you're going to do the assessment, then this initial assessment will help you to plan an assessment in the future for them. So assessment here is broken into 3 parts. I like to have this in mind from the word go in 3 parts. The first one is diagnostic, the very first assessment that you carry out in order to find out the learner needs and also identify where they've been from, where they've been, and how best you can help them, and how best you can plan an assessment when you begin with them. The second part of assessment, the assessment process is what I call it is. Do you like to? Can you see me there? Do you like me there? Yeah. It is number 2, the formative assessment. What is formative assessment? This is a type of assessment that is normally carried out through coursework before the final deadline. That is to say, you give out a piece of work to a candidate. They do some work based on the criteria that you give them, just like I was introducing to you what kind of criteria you'll be meeting in order for you to succeed or pass these assessors' qualifications. So they've got a set of criteria against which they compare their performance. Now, once they've gone through that first set of questions you've given them against the criteria, they bring the work back to you, or you observe them, or there's a professional discussion. Then you give them feedback on how well they performed and also the gaps. The gaps are things which they couldn't meet the criteria with. So you tell them to have improvement in those areas. And by saying improve doesn't mean you just tell them the word improve. You must explain and bring out points based on the factual information of that area of study. If it's health and social care, you would tell them, I saw you use that Zimmer frame. But the way you gave it to the service user wasn't appropriate because it could have caused the service user to fall. How? It was too far from the way where you placed it. The service user had to lean forward too much. So in the future, please don't do that. Bring it closer where the service user is. And before you let go, you must wait for an acknowledgement or prompt the service user. Are you all right? Have you got it in your hands? Are you okay? If they say yes, watch them move the first step, second step, let go. So you give them feedback so that in the next stage of assessment, they'll have improved on that. So there is formative, you are given work, there's feedback. So here, there's continuous feedback. Here, there's feedback. There's review. Then finally, after the process of formative, of course, they won't be on the course forever. You understand? They won't be on the course forever. Initial assessment, will help you to plan your assessment, in which when you produce that assessment, there will be formative part of assessment, in which you give the candidates questions, they bring back answers, you feedback, and again they bring back answers, and the final deadline, there will be a summative assessment. Yeah, are you happy with this? Summative. Let me just remove this and just draw it somewhere. There'll be summative assessment, I beg your pardon. Okay, excellent. So I'll just bring it somewhere here. Here. There will be summative assessment. These tend to be the final. Now, summative assessment can be done in several ways. The very first way that you consider, if you're on the vocational program like these ones where you give coursework, you must now get the folder. And by then, you would have told the candidates, next week is a final deadline. All the pieces of evidence which I gave you feedback on must be back in the folder. Then when I collect the pieces of evidence, I'm going to do a final assessment. That's summative. You collect all the pieces of evidence they've been doing for the rest of that year or that term, whatever the case might be, you bring them together to make a final judgment. Judgment done based on the assessment criteria. There are other assessments that you do, summative assessment by examination. You do that paper and you're done. Yeah, are you with me? And there are other areas we can talk about it regarding norm and criterion assessment, but I won't go that direction. Let's talk about the summative assessment now, that you're now gonna get all the work that has been produced to make a final judgment. At this time, there isn't feedback because it's a deadline. The AQA has to come tomorrow or whatever the case might be. But of course, leave time for the internal verifier to go through the work. I'll just put that word in there. You now collect all the evidence, measure it against the criteria. Now, if the candidate has performed very well, and in fact, not this, if you've been doing the formative assessment very well, summative assessment becomes easier. How? Because much of the feedback will have been taken into consideration. The candidate would have improved on it, and you'll have also marked it beforehand. You don't want to leave at the end all the work. You'll be struggling. I never struggled in my assessment because I carry on the process of initial assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment with ample time. And I go like, this is my work is like that. It's like a spiral. If you think it like a spiral, you start here, okay? That's initial assessment. You plan, you give feedback, you give feedback, you give feedback. You keep going back, you keep going until you've got the final. So that spiral kind of things, backtracking. You give feedback, you give feedback, you give feedback, they work on it. You give feedback, you assess it, just like that. But if you don't mark the feedback that you gave them, there are too many feedbacks that you haven't marked. You find that your assessment life will be a dread. But I don't want it to be like that. Copy my strategy. When I give feedback, I must mark the feedback and give the feedback on the feedback until it is crisp and tight. Are you happy with that? Excellent. Right, so we have got 3 here now. 1, initial assessment. 2nd, formative assessment. 3rdly, summative assessment, when the candidate will complete and you now make a judgment. Are you happy with that? We'll end here and we'll continue in the next phase, in which now we're going to look at what is the main purpose of assessment. Why assessment? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. For any questions, you know where to go. Ring us. Just go on the website as it appears on the screen or on your documents or on your Moodle account, the online learning account. Go and chat with your tutor there. You'll be provided with the necessary information. Thank you very much, and God bless you.